Good morning.
Good
Welcome,
morning.
welcome for another epic episode of Leadership Edge. And this morning we have a surprise. We have here with me Gary Noesner, and we have opportunity to dive into some of the hottest topics. Today's topic on the Leadership Edge is obviously how we navigate the future, executive roundtables discussion, but it's all focused on four things that every leader needs to have a better skill set, which is empathy, diversity, growth, and excellence in their performance. And as a result, in this series, we have these hot topics. And today, hot topic is all about how do we navigate as a leaders during the crisis, navigating the future, specifically in times when things are challenging. Oh boy, did they get challenging in the months in recent years. So without further ado, I would love to introduce you to Gary, who is obviously been known with his tremendous work and efforts for FBI as a crisis negotiator, who was the chief of negotiating unit, but also worked very closely with other agencies nationally, internationally, and contribute so much to where they are today. So Gary, do you mind giving a little bit additional information of who you are, a little bit about yourself, and some great things you achieved thus far?
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you and to have a little time to discuss some of these interesting topics. As you said, I retired from the FBI after a 30-year career, and 23 of which I was a hostage negotiator, and for the final 10 years of my career, I was the chief of the crisis negotiation unit. And in that capacity, my unit and I responded to kidnappings, hijackings, prison riots, right-wing militia standoffs, embassy sieges, and about 120 kidnap cases of American citizens abroad. So got a lot of interesting experiences along the way. I wrote a book in 2010 called Stalling for Time, My Life as an FBI Hostage Negotiator, and was also been involved in, that book was used for a number of TV series on Waco, two dramatic series, one on Paramount and Showtime, and then a dramatic documentary on Netflix. So that's kind of my background. I do a fair amount of speaking to both law enforcement groups and to corporations, speaking about the lessons I learned in negotiations and how they apply in life and work.
That's fantastic. That's wonderful to have you to share a little bit about those experiences, specifically as we're seeing obviously a lot of challenges right now that we're facing. So, do you mind sharing a little bit about what was some of the key elements for you to be obviously so effective in your role, specifically when it comes to negotiation?
Well, I think the major attribute for a good negotiator is self-control. And, the old saying that if you can't control your own emotions, how can you expect to be able to influence someone else? So that's the kind of the starting point. And from there, to become a good listener, to engage with whether it's your team or an adversary or, opposing entity, whatever it might be. The primary skill to exert influence is to first be a good listener and understand. Stephen Covey, the business guru, says first seek to understand and then to be understood, which is a pretty common sense principle that's been around a long time, and he has a nice catchphrase for it. But that's really critical. You'll have an opportunity in any engagement to be able to share your thoughts and your recommendations and opinions, whatever it might be, but you should first invest the time and effort into effectively listening to someone else. And in the FBI negotiation program since 1990, we've taught active listening skills that we borrowed from the counseling field and the work of Carl Rogers. And active listening denotes that it is engaging. You ask open-ended questions to gather more information. You paraphrase what you've just heard from the other person to demonstrate that you have indeed listened and understood. You've You're not just saying, I hear you, I hear you. You're proving it. So those are amongst the skills we use to create a relationship that is conducive to exerting influence and achieving the kind of outcome we want in any phase of life. And it's quite effective, and it's amazing how many people don't do it. But certainly, it's important for leadership. You know, people will work very hard on a team, be very loyal to an organization if they have confidence in their leadership, and their leadership recognizes their contributions, acknowledges it publicly, and supports the team members so they can grow and become a larger part of the team. All that requires communication skills. Obviously, you want to set a good personal example, but to be able to acknowledge, there was an old, I think a book came out many, many years ago called Management by Walking Around. If you're running a corporation or a company, it becomes hard, if this is an international outfit with multiple sites. But to the extent you can engage with your workforce and let them know that you care about what they do and you're interested in how they do it, you want to hear their ideas for improvement. These are all the attributes of a good leader. And if somebody comes up with a great idea, I mean, don't claim it for yourself. I mean, publicly acknowledge that this great idea came from Izabela, and I wanted everybody to know that. She's a great worker on our team. She came up with this idea. We thought it was terrific, and we want to really recognize her for coming up with that. That makes people want to work for you, to know that you're not going to take credit for something they've come up with, and that you're going to share the glory. And indeed, if you're running into challenges and you have setbacks, the team jointly shares that as well.
That's fantastic. And I love when you mention an analogy of the managing things by walking around, because a lot of things don't happen just sitting behind a desk, right? And people, the traditional way of power play, coming to the office, and usually when something is not right, but having chance and opportunity to interact with people, have a conversation, and keep a pulse, not only what's going on, but where the opportunities are. And obviously that requires to build the trust, requires also to be able to think critically and so much. So I'm curious, obviously, from one of the things that I always see, and you definitely highlight in not only your career, it's obviously being able to communicate effectively. So do you mind sharing a little bit for everybody that's watching and listening how fundamental that is, and how we cannot bypass effective communication?
Well, if you look at it, negotiations is communication, and everything in life is about communicating. We're social animals. We depend on each other for every facet of our lives, and certainly in the business context, being an effective communicator is essential for a successful leader, in my opinion. I mean, if you're a dictatorial type management approach, and you don't appear receptive and open to what your employees have to say, then you're setting yourself up for problems and disloyalty, employee turnover. You make people reluctant to come up with a new idea. I mean, even in the FBI, particularly early in my career, we had a very stovepipe management system, and you couldn't really pass an idea uh, higher up very easily. So it was very difficult because there were people that would stop an idea because it was seen by them as too risky for their career. And you have to, as a boss, I think, find ways to encourage those kinds of inputs. I think meeting with your employees at various levels and just having an open discussion, said, our production numbers are down slightly for this quarter. As any of you here, in your key positions in the companies, anybody have any ideas on what we might do to correct these problems that we're encountering? I want to hear your ideas. Now, you may already have a sense of what you want to do, and maybe you've even decided a clear pathway, but you're wise if you take their input. People don't always expect you to do what they recommend, but they really feel good about being listened to. I found as a manager, very rarely would I have one of the supervisors that worked for me would come in with a complaint or an issue. And I found most of the time I didn't really have to solve the problem. I just had to be attentive. I had to put my phone on hold and come out from behind my desk and sit down with the person and say, let me hear what's on your mind, or what your concerns are. And that essentially is it. People want to be heard, they want to be understood, they want to be appreciated and acknowledged. Well, that's not exactly rocket science. It's pretty easy stuff, but we fail to do it. And I think part of the problem is because leaders in business and other avenues are very busy people. Invariably, when someone comes into you with an issue, it's your busiest day and you don't have time for it. And in some cases, you may have to say, hey, listen, I'm just swamped today. Can we have this discussion tomorrow? And that may be fine. But if you can carve out a little bit of time for this person, now's the moment. Let's do it. Let them know that their coming in is important enough for you to stop what you're doing or set aside a little bit of time to listen to them. I think these are one of many effective techniques that you can use to let people know that they're valued.
I love that. And it's so interesting when we see someone who can speak with that level of clarity, but also who can exude a level of empathy, specifically as we're dealing and navigating challenging and difficult situations, either due to poor behavior or performance, or just simply because of challenging situation that is happening, period. So when we look at that, I'm curious, obviously from your hostage negotiation situations, how can you balance those two things to still be able to lead very effectively, still also be very empathetic, even though you're dealing with maybe bad guy or bad guys or very, very difficult, explosive situation?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with self-confidence, as I mentioned earlier, self-control, self-confidence, but also, you know, I would always embrace the serenity prayer, to know what you can do and to know what is beyond your control and to understand the difference. That's it in essence. And I don't mean in a religious context, but I think it's a really good guide in life, because I would always go into a negotiation, whether it be with a hostage taker or, an internal employee squabble thing, knowing I'm going to be successful. And the reason why is I knew I could control myself. I knew I wasn't going to get anger. I wasn't going to spew my disregard for somebody, even though I may not be happy with what they are saying or what they're representing. Nonetheless, I'm controlling myself, and that I was going to do the best of my ability to resolve the situation in an equitable and fair, honest manner with integrity and honesty. I was confident I would do that. Therefore, how can you fail? You can't. If you don't resolve the problem, it's because some factors that led to the outcome were beyond your control. I can make a representation to a customer, and I was in the consulting business for some years after I got out of the FBI. And, I'd go into it saying, I'm going to present the best foot forward I can for what my company is offering. And I won't hold anything back. I'm going to give it my best effort to be clear and concise and represent things accurately. And I'm hopefully going to win the business, and I usually did. But if I don't, I have to recognize, well, it's not the end of the world, number one. Number two is, they will have other factors that are leading to their decision. Maybe the person you're dealing with isn't really the ultimate decision maker, and it comes down to the finance department. And they say, well, Gary, we didn't go with you because your company's more expensive than company B. Okay, fine. That's a decision that I wasn't really going to win to begin with, perhaps on a price point. But you always leave these interactions in a positive manner, because what I did also find out in the private sector, there were decision makers who were not in direct communication with me sometimes, who would go with a cheaper vendor. Invariably, they did not get the product they wanted. They did not get the service they expected. And they come back to you because they remember that the interaction they had with you was very positive. The only reason they didn't go with you is perhaps because your price point was higher. But, don't burn the bridge. In other words, don't say, well, I'm giving you a better product here and you don't appreciate that. The hell with you people, I hope, whatever. That's just hurting yourself in the long run. Some of those clients will come back. You say, listen, I appreciate you giving me the time to to talk to you about what we do and why I think we're the best person or the best entity to provide this service. But I understand you've made another decision. That's fine. I would only hope that if it doesn't work out the way you wanted, that you will consider giving us another opportunity to work with you. That's fine. You're not going to get the business. You figure that out pretty early, but at least leave the door a little bit open. Leave the other entity with a positive feeling that you're professional and courteous, and you don't expect to win every single thing.
That is so true, and I see this specifically as we get older, right? That's such a great words of wisdom, and for the younger generation, younger leaders that are easy to make a judgment or feel hurt because obviously some things are not pleasant, and a lot of times we're seeing people being playing you or being played, and it's just really hard and difficult. But
It
also,
is.
life shows over the years and decades, like those who took advantage maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago are maybe completely placed today, but always comes back. And it's so interesting to see people like that, specifically when we talk about either using their power or abusing others. We're seeing now plethora of cases when things come to the light, specifically how we conduct ourselves in the business. And people thought, oh, nobody's going to care, or nobody will find out what happened 10, 20, 30 years ago. In reality, that is your track record, and it's going to accumulate and continue to actually sooner or later come to the light. And if that's not something you want to be known for, or how do you choose to lead, it's opportunity also to adjust and change, which really brings the point of conflicts, right? It's like now we have also data showing, specifically in working environment, the so much conflicts, and also, as we call it, short fuse. It's like, how do you de-escalate them in an effective way, but also give them a little bit of tools to find that is other alternative ways to do that, or lead better, or be better human, period.
I think another point that amplifies that a bit is don't put so much pressure on yourself to be successful every single time. The success is in how you present yourself. I'm successful in being consistently straightforward and well prepared and honest and open. I know that that's not always going to give me the results I want. That's okay. The analogy for me was the number one thing that police negotiators do around the country is they respond to suicides or situations in which suicide is an element. And I always tell negotiators, listen, you're going to go into this giving it your very best. You're going to try to the extent of your ability, your training, to keep this person from harming themselves. But if you respond to enough suicides, somebody is going to kill themselves despite your best effort. Don't take that blame on your shoulders. Don't take the burden of that decision because it wasn't yours. You did your best, and you should hang your head high, or hold your head high, and not say, oh my God, I could have, should have, would have kept this person from harming themselves and I failed. No, the person failed to make the right decision, or perhaps their decision to harm themselves was to stop the pain and they felt this was the only way of doing it. There is a certain level of those are unreachable. There may be some ambivalence, they haven't done it yet, but they're moving in that direction. Hopefully our intervention, and it usually does, keeps them from doing it, but there's no guarantee. And you have to go into, I think, a business negotiation in a similar way. I don't want to go in, because if you go in with the attitude of my career depends on this, I've got to make this sale, then you're setting yourself up for a really tough impact if it doesn't go the way you want. You should be satisfied. And the other thing it does, when you have that kind of pressure on yourself, you don't behave and present yourself in a natural way. You come across, less authentic, I would say. So I go into every negotiation assuming I'm going to be successful. I'm not always, but I always go in assuming I'm going to be, because I'm controlling how I approach it. And that's, I think, a good way to go through life. There are probably businessmen listening to this saying, that's unacceptable. We have to have a win every single time. Well, good for you if your track record's 100%, but I haven't seen a whole lot of that in life or the world. But give it our best. We're honest. We have integrity. We have consistency. we're well prepared. We make a good product. And if we don't get the job, one of the things you might do, and I think is a great thing to do, because we did it when we would resolve a hostage situation and the person survived, we would say, what did we say that made you come out? And interestingly enough, the answer was pretty much always the same. I don't remember what you said, but I like the way you said it. Well, that's a pretty powerful thing that I think also translates into business, So if we don't get a particular business, say, I appreciate that, Izabela, your company went another way. No problem. I understand that. But I'm wondering if you could help me out. Is there something you feel I could have presented better to you? Did I make myself clear? Did I get it right? There's occasionally I watch the Rachel Maddow TV show. Maybe some people here like her, don't like her. That's not the relevant point here. Every interview she does, when she describes the situation and then the interviewee comes on with her, she says, did I just get all of that right? Is there anything I said that's not accurate or you'd like to change or correct? And I think that's a wonderful habit. It gives people the opportunity to straighten something out if you didn't get it right. If you've mischaracterized it or you don't fully understand, you might start off saying, this is the problem I understand your company's experiencing, and this is the solution we have. And they may say, well, our problem is actually slightly different than what you said. Okay, now I've learned something important and I've acknowledged that I'm open to being corrected on it. These are just really basic communication things. The number one factor to success in terms of a personality attribute in life, in business, is likability. It's like the Supreme Court justice, when asked about pornography, said, well, I can't define it, but I know it when I see it. Well, likability may be similarly described. Some people look at it differently than others, but trying to be a likable person doesn't mean are condescending. It doesn't mean you're overly fawning over somebody. Just be a solid, dependable, likable person, and you're going to be successful in most avenues of life.
Wow, that is excellent point. And I love what you said. We're not perfect, but if we do our best shot, then everybody knows that, because it's a different energy, different approach to it. But also I love what you said, because right now we're seeing specifically the way everybody is judged or evaluated or perceived, that it's expected that you're always 100% providing or giving that you're always succeeding, and that success, it's very hard to achieve, obviously, and to maintain it, because right now we're also living in a time when it's a lot of trial and error, right? And we have to be willing to allow others to try, and to say, we thought this might be a good solution, that didn't work, let's adjust, let's make a change. But also how important it is to continue through that process, to be very respectful. And I love what you mentioned in terms of likability, because that also shows you approachable. It's easy to work with you. It's easy to have a conversation. It's easy to bring issues to you, versus feeling like I can't face you and I'm afraid, and I also have a problem that I cannot obviously address. And that's where we've seen a lot of shifts that are happening. But I'm curious, how would you suggest for someone to increase their likability based on conversations that you had with the people that are struggling, obviously, to achieve the goals, or be able to really figure it out, the best path forward from behavioral stance to work with people?
Well, go into a situation relaxed, and as you were visiting with an old friend. I mean, when you go into a meeting and you are so tense and you're so over prepared, I'm going to get these 3 talking points in, and I got to get it done in the first 5 minutes, and I'm going to say the first words, then you're going to do the second word. I'm not suggesting that planning and preparation and teamwork is invaluable, but don't put so much pressure on yourself for perfection. It's like I said, in these very tense life and death negotiations, the end of the day, it didn't really matter all the specifics of what you said and what you said it. It's how you said it. That this police officer, that the person we were dealing with normally had not necessarily the best experiences with police in their past history, Now all of a sudden they say, well, this Gary guy, he seems to really be interested in me. He seems to be sincere and genuine. And when he says they're not going to beat me up when I come out, I believe him. I believe him. And that's why I'm coming out. It doesn't mean we're going to be best friends or exchange Christmas cards and have Thanksgiving dinner together. But in this tense situation, if you can achieve it in those kind of situations, then I think you can easily see how it's not quite so difficult in your typical business interaction. But we're not just talking about, at least I'm not just talking about executives dealing or salespeople trying to sell a product. It's internal to the company. It's your internal teamwork. It's it's your family life. It's so many things in life. Just try to be, instead of angry and challenging and dismissive, try to be open and understanding. I've got a really good friend that, at our age now, he tends to tell me the same story. We don't see each other very often, but when we do, I know exact stories he's going to tell me, and he forgets he's told me before. And that used to irritate me at first. And I said, you know what? I love this guy. I've known him for forever. I can put up with this story again. It's no big deal, and I'm glad that he feels comfortable enough to sharing it with me again. And it's okay. We're all flawed. I'm probably do the same thing. Just let it be water off a duck's back. Don't be so uptight all the time. And I think that seems like such a small, insignificant thing, but it's really not. I think it'll win you more appreciation. People want to work with people they like and people who respect them. That's as old as time, and we should do that. When I was doing consulting, um, no company is perfect, and whatever product, service you are selling to another company, somewhere along the line it's going to go wrong. The deliverables are not going to be what you hoped, or that you missed the time schedule, the product deficiency, you name it. What's really important, though, is that your client has the confidence that when they call up Gary, Gary's going to get fixed. Gary's going to get fixed. So, okay, I'm on it. And you made that commitment, and you should, if you're a good salesperson, I believe, to say, I'm going to follow through. This client is important to me. This relationship and my ability to sustain this for future business is so significant that I'm gonna fix this current problem so that I don't sour the relationship. It's absolutely critical that take place, and you give them the confidence that it's going to be fixed up, and I think that's important.
Mm, I love those points, and you spot on because people often don't even realize sometimes the aftermath, and also we will literally live in very connected world right now, specifically, obviously with social media, with LinkedIn, and everything. So it's very easy to see who we know, who we have in common, what experience somebody else had, or is just something that it's maybe happened once. That will surprise us. But if it's a pattern, as you pointed out, and something that is ongoing, we just don't know aftermath and implications that can truly be so reversely affecting not only you or team, but also, of course, overall organization. And are we really looking things from the right lens? And specifically, what I wanted to kind of highlight here, Gary, is to hear your perspective. We live also in very chaotic time, right? When priorities are competing, and in the same time we have these different variables that nobody predicted, like we had a situation with COVID. Now we have a situation with supply chain being disrupted. We're also having obviously unpredicted environmental catastrophes that affected obviously different parts of the world, and also even in this country. So it's like, how do you now bring that to this really high alert, high chaotic, and high demanding environments? And what would you suggest for leaders to do differently in order to really get through it as best possible way?
Well, I think whatever your business is, if you can relate to the client that you want to provide a quality service, and in those instances where it's not what they expect, that you're going to fix it. Now, you may say, hey, listen, you're absolutely right. We were late on that shipment, but there was also an issue with you changing the specifications, some weeks after we started the process, and I know you appreciate how that also affected our ability to meet the timeline. It's okay to share facts and don't always be cowering and be afraid. You just say, well, let's break this down and see what happened and make sure we can work together in a team fashion to make sure we can overcome this problem in the best possible way. And if you were at fault and you can't get the problem fixed right away, then, we're going to make this right the next shipment by reducing our payment. You see it in little ways. For example, if you're in a restaurant and, something comes out, your food comes out cold. Everybody else's meal is served on time. 3 other people, they got great meals. Your meal, they didn't cook your meat enough. It's got to go back to the kitchen. So now you sit there and wait, or the 3 people have to wait, and you tell them, no, go ahead and start your meal. Your meal comes out and they've all finished their meal. Well, that's obviously not a good situation. But what the restaurant should do, some of them do, some of them don't. It's say, listen, we've inconvenienced you. It was our mistake. Your meal is on us, or free dessert for everyone, or a beverage on our tab. And maybe that means that restaurant didn't make much money on your party's dinner that night. So what? You've got somebody that's going to come back and spend money with you again, probably, because they realize that mistakes happen, but you've corrected it and you've come forward. You've embraced the mistake and you've taken both. If they're still unhappy, you say, okay, we did our best. The client says, you'll never come back here. He's going to write us a terrible review. Well, I'm very sorry. We've tried to correct it the best we can, and, we appreciate, and we're sorry we let you down this time. I hope you'll give us another chance. We'd like to give you a certificate for, half price on your next dinner. Just do something. I always tell a story. I went to the same dry cleaner for 30 years where I lived, and never a problem. And I had a brand new shirt. The first time I took it in to be cleaned and pressed, all the buttons were smashed, every single button. And I said to the dry cleaner, I think you guys messed up on the ironing here. And she's, oh, no, that's a cheap shirt. That's a cheap shirt. That's not our fault. And I said, okay, you just lost my business for 30 years. So you had this customer for 30 years who every week brought in his shirts and his suits and all that. How much did it cost them to say, I'm sorry that happened. We're going to replace those buttons. We got a lady right here that sews them on. It'll take her 10 minutes. But no, they didn't own up to it, and they lost my business. And I think that's a minor thing, of course, but it shows you, I'm not one that believes the customer is always right, but if you can make an accommodation, particularly to someone who's a customer, you want to keep that. The principal, when I started consulting, the company I worked for, a great company, said, we want to be farmers, not hunters. And that's a great approach philosophically. Hunting new business is great. Expanding your business is fine. You always want to look for new markets and new opportunities to expand what you do. But farming and sustaining the business with your existing clients is far more important and probably more lucrative. If I can take this $1 million deal I have with your company and turn it into a $5 million deal because you're happy with our deliverables, well, that's a lot better than going out and fighting hard to win over the business from somebody you've never dealt with before. So I think these are things to keep in mind.
I love that philosophy. And I love that saying, being a farmer versus hunter, because you're right. Hunting can take a long, you don't know when it's going to happen. And then you don't know how long it's going to sustain you. And it's kind of a constant roller coaster. But when you have opportunity to be more productive and do more farming approach, not more just the sustainability, but then also continuation and quality and the opportunity to really see what you may need. May have extra help, the extra people you can hire, or get an extra land to cultivate, meaning with the newer clients, and really be able to continue provide, but not jeopardize the quality. And what we're seeing also specifically right now with a lot of changes that is happening obviously in Fortune 500 companies and others, even small businesses. Everybody's affected in so many different ways. And obviously knowing what not only customer need or want, or where things are headed, and being able to hear them and anticipate their needs. Like in your case, they should definitely recognize also loyalty, who is the obviously existing customer, and what that goes with that, what type of care or arrangements are being made. But also looking from the different brands, we're seeing a lot of brands now that sadly damage their reputation with similar types of situation, and obviously are now looking for alternatives, or customers are looking for alternatives. So I'm curious, what do you see happening right now that you think also that's going to affect how we're going to be doing business in the future? Because all of these symptomatic issues that we're seeing are setting the trend that's going to definitely change the landscape of the future business.
I think a lot of companies, it seems today, their service orientation is lacking, and I think they don't fully appreciate the fact that your reputation, it means a lot, and your ability to stand by your product is important. Now, if I sell you a particular product, you may not be in the market to ever buy another one. And you might be dissatisfied, and I can say, well, the hell with you. I don't care if you like it or not. You bought it, I got your money, adios. But your reputation spreads, then somebody else comes to you and says, I want to buy one of those. And you say, well, don't buy it from Gary. Their stuff is terrible. They don't stand by their product. I think there's a lot of plumbing companies, a particular plumbing company whose product we always buy because it's fully guaranteed. And they stand by it. And you say, hey, this broke, it's not working properly, send it back, we'll send you a new one. Boom, no questions asked. And and now they've, quite some time ago, they've won my lifelong business because of that orientation towards future. Does it cut out on their profit margin? I suspect in a very minimal fashion, but they make a good product, and I'm sure the returns are pretty minimal. But they sell more because people know that product is guaranteed, and they will stand by it. They don't make you go through a bunch of silly red tape and argue with you over it. They just say, we got it, send it back, we'll send you a new one. Boom. And I as a consumer like that approach, whatever the product might be, and it's going to gain and maintain my business. And I think if you think of other, I don't mean to focus this on a specific product, but a service, whether you're doing an audit for a company or you're doing their taxes or whatever it might be, being consistent and trying to be quality. And, another thing is in the FBI, we used to have an inspection process every 56 field offices, once every 2 years or whatever. A team comes in and they audit how that office is working. And one of the things they do is they go to all the local police departments and they said, is this FBI office supporting you? Are they living up to your expectations? Are they helping you in your investigations? In other words, they're seeking not just what we tell them and what records we maintain, but they're asking, in essence, our customers how we perform. And I think a lot of companies should be doing that too. Run an audit. Are you set? Not some of these surveys, would you mind answering a few questions? Next thing you know, you're on the computer for half an hour asking a bunch of dumb questions. But if in the real world you can actually call a client and say, hey, Izabela, I'm from Gary's corporate office, and I know you recently did sales with us, and I want to make sure, are you happy with the product? Is there anything you would have liked to see differently from us? We'd like that feedback from you. Not only does that make sure that we're avoiding problems, but I think it sends you a message that we're a company that gives a darn and we care. For me, that's important. Maybe for others, not so much.
I love that. And what's interesting is I find that philosophy is definitely still way applicable. But I'm also sadly seeing trends like which we're also seeing that I never thought is going to be also a part of the business, ghosting and or false promises, or cutting the corners, or cutting people out, or poor communication, or giving different information and conflicting information, and then really creating more chaos and also conflict unnecessary, right? So it really shows that we're having, on contrary, opportunity not only for improvement, but also to really get that back high quality customer service that we used to. We're also seeing sometimes people also abusing that. That's also in some flip side issues too. But the bottom line is we've seen some really interesting trends that also are going to require, I think, more than ever, more transparency and addressing these concerns in much more effective way. Because I also see how it's affecting a lot of people, their businesses and their longevity in the business, because it creates a lot of anxiety and a lot of issues that are really hard for a lot of people to handle.
That anxiety that you just mentioned, it also has a big impact on employee retention.
Yeah.
Because if your customers are unsatisfied, everything's a whole bunch of things are probably not working well in your company. And your employees are disenchanted, they're tired of hearing the complaints, they're not particularly proud of the product, and they move on. And when an employee moves on, there's significant costs with hiring a new person, training a new person, and you look at companies that have a high employee retention rate. That's a sign. That's a sign that they're probably doing a lot of good things right. And if you get and recruit good people, you want to try to find a way for them to grow within your company and have opportunities and to be recognized and acknowledged and awarded appropriately and share part of the success, and not only privately but publicly. And another thing is, that doesn't always mean we cut you a bonus check. That's nice. People appreciate that. I like that. The FBI, you'd work a case for 5 years and it would be successfully prosecuted, and the FBI give you $1,000 and think they were making your day, whoop-de-doo. What was more important, though, is if a very senior manager said, "You did a great job on that case. I'm very proud of you. Thank you." That meant more to me than some $1,000 before taxes taken out as a silly little bonus for something we did in the government. And then you'd find out that 3 levels above you had nothing to do with the case, would make $10,000 on the same work that you did. Companies need to think these things out. Let's really reward the people who are working, not only in perhaps a financial way, but in an acknowledgement way, both public in our meetings and privately. If we have a group get together, we say, "Hey, Gary did a great job on that, everybody. I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention." But more importantly, you get the private word with the boss and the acknowledgement. And then you'll find employees don't want to leave that company. They want to stay there for their whole careers. They want to grow in that company because people want to be valued and appreciated. I mean, that's as old as time. And if you do that properly, you're going to really reduce the number of people that move on. Some people have to move on because there's limitations to positions where they can grow into at higher levels. And you know what? You shouldn't be disappointed. I hate to lose you, Izabela, but we don't have the positions here that are merit you. We're going to give you the best recommendation. We want you to be successful. That's fine. Don't be bitter. I can't believe you're leaving the company. Encourage people to grow. Hopefully, in your company, if you have the opportunity in the room for them, and if not, then that's fine. You haven't failed. You've developed a good employee that's going to move on, and who knows, they may come back again in the future. Handle it properly. Be happy for people, supportive of people. I tried to do that as a leader in the FBI. When we would have a big siege like at Waco, I would try to solicit the input of all the negotiators, even if some of them were fairly young. We'd have a roundtable when we had some gaps in the communication and say, anybody have any ideas? I want to hear your thoughts, any suggestions. And I always remember, there was one critical time frame in Waco where the youngest, most inexperienced negotiator there came up with an absolutely brilliant idea. There's all of us old grizzled negotiators who hadn't thought of it, and this young man did. And I said, that is brilliant, and that's what we decided to do, and it had a huge impact and made a difference and helped us get a bunch of people out safely. And because we encouraged that atmosphere, if we hadn't had that setup where we encourage these people to not be shy, share with us an idea if you have a thought, and taking the time to listen to them. And it might not be a very good idea, but that's fine. You say thank you for that. That's appreciate that input. We'll keep that in mind and give that consideration. That's fine. That's what people want.
I love that. And that's example what it looks like to lead, integrate a healthy culture and have a healthy working environment. And what also takes to recognize if the culture is toxic. And we both know that always starts with the leadership. But I love what you mentioned about, because we're always so focused so much on negative things, just the way the psychologically and how we're conditioned specifically in recent years with media and everything that we usually keep hearing in the meetings, etc. If everything 99.99% was done right, and that little tiny spigot of something that might need to either improve or concern overshadows all the great work, then it's really killing that morale that you were talking about, and performance and engagement, and frankly, desire to be part of the team or really to bring the best self. And a lot of times we see in the team think, we're seeing a lot of patterns there that are also, as a result, not only having financial setbacks, right, and financial implications, but also customer trust and frankly, future employee trust. Because if rating of CEO is so poor, if rating of their performance and who they are, and then everybody in the C-suite, and then frankly others, it's kind of that creates that ripple effect, and definitely not desirable one, right?
Yeah.
But
I just wanted to say something about teamwork. Another analogy from my law enforcement negotiation career is we rose or fell as a team. In the FBI, after a successful situation, we never said, Gary Noesner negotiated out the perpetrator. We don't say that. We said the negotiation team was successful in convincing the person to come out. If it is a success, it's because we all sat around, agreed on the strategy. Now, I or someone else might be the one on the phone doing the actual negotiation, being, in essence, the voice of the team, but the ideas, the thoughts, and the strategy were developed by a group of people. And we acknowledge that in the success. We don't highlight one individual performance. It's like if one person performs well on an athletic event, you don't say, well, they did it all by themselves. The team did that, and again, if it doesn't come out the way we want, we share the responsibility. We gave it our best shot. We explored every potential idea. We did everything we could to find ways to save that woman so that man wouldn't kill her. And sadly, we weren't successful. Now, it certainly isn't because we didn't give it our best effort or that we didn't consider all the possibilities. So it also psychologically protects you. If someone takes too much credit for success, then they better be prepared to take all the blame for the failure. And we are much better if we do that to the extent we can. Obviously, there's a leader, and the leader has to be the ultimate decision maker after hearing all the inputs. But if we come to these ideas and thoughts and strategies as a team, we're going to, number one, be more successful. But number two, we're going to be able to handle the success and distribute the acknowledgement and recognition better. And likewise, share the fault and not have it be so psychologically damaging. Gary, you lost that deal. Well, wait a minute. There were 5 of us working on that project. We looked at it from every angle. We gave it our best shot, but within the parameters we had to work with, unfortunately, we weren't able to get the business. I mean, I think that's a way to go. And a leader that will not acknowledge those who helped him or her make that success is really doing so at their own peril. Let your team get the primary recognition. I'm very proud to lead this team of innovative, creative people. Came up with some great ideas. Another thing on team that may not really have much of a business applicability, but when we work a major siege, a prison riot, or a right-wing militia standoff, we work in 12-hour shifts. And it's important. It's a long day in a stressful life and death situation. And the team going off needs to get some sleep so they can be prepared to come back in the next day and take over. But there is even some professional concern that we did all this work all day long, setting this thing up for success. We go home for an hour and the other team gets them to surrender and they get all the credit. Well, I came up with a solution for that for our team, particularly Waco. I said, listen, you all go home, get some sleep. If anything significant happens tonight, if the person decides to surrender, if the tactical team is going to make an entry, we're going to call every one of you and let you know about it so you're part of the process. Because where we are today is in part because of where you brought us. Now we're taking it the next step. Tomorrow you will come in and take it from us. It reduces jealousy and lets everybody know that even if we're operating in a large team, we're in this together, and we're all going to take credit for what happens, and we're all going to be in a position to deal with a result that we weren't expecting or didn't want or weren't happy with. I think these are simple little things that can be done. Probably a lot of great leaders out there listening to this already do that, but it's a good reminder to think about that.
I love that. And I love that's to me true essence of leadership. And that's true essence of building the legacy, individual, as a leader, as a team, as an organization, because that creates tremendous ripple effect. And obviously, as you mentioned, sharing the successes, listening. And right now, as a strategist, I can tell you the organizations that I will constantly leveraging and talking what strategy, what option, what angle, what else we could look at, what we didn't consider. Are we really looking this from the right perspective? That are asking those questions, not only are leading, but they're also very effective and succeeding in times of chaos that we're facing today. The ones that are assuming, that are operating silos, that are not talking to other divisions and groups, and they are also not transparent, not visible, not engaging, and frankly, not trustworthy, and giving all these excuses or delays and showing how indifferent they are or how powerful they are, they're failing, and the implications of their failures are yet to be seen, and I find that quite irresponsible. So based on all these takeaways that you shared here, obviously, one thing that stood up to me, the level of flexibility and adaptability you had in your work, and also level of not only resilience, but also obviously skill set that it's so crucial right now, that effective communication, trust, and the psychological safety. So with closing, do you mind sharing a little bit about how did you create so effectively also psychological safety that you had with very competitive individuals, very smart and brilliant and capable, to also create a very healthy working environment?
Well, in terms of our philosophy that we developed in the FBI and shared with law enforcement around the world, I think don't get caught up in analysis paralysis. There's some times where we overly prepare. Now, you want to know what you can find out about your adversary. With us, it might be a criminal that we've dealt with before. What's his criminal history, his mental health history? Let's interview people that know him. How does he behave in stressful situations? Is he impulsive? All the sort of thing. And you can do the same thing in the corporate level. How does this company we're trying to work with, what do we know about them, their leadership, their decision making, what's important to them? And more importantly is once you do engage directly with them, ask questions to show that you want to make sure you have it. This is what we understand. Is that correct? And if it's not, I'd really like to see if you could explain that to me so we fully understand, because we want to be able to offer you the best possible solution to the problem you're having. But I'm not going to pretend I know your problems before you've had a chance to share them with me. Be open and be genuine, and people will gravitate to you because of that. Don't always look at it as this mind bending manipulation and psychological stuff. People think that's what we do as negotiators, and it's not. It's plain old relationship building. That's what it is, and that's what works in life, in my opinion.
I love that. And speaking of relationships, to build healthy, good relationships, obviously we need to be able to figure it out, or give us space and listen. And one quick tip for everything that obviously we talked about, do you mind how to build those great relationships and how you continue? And even now that you're retired, you're so visible, so helpful, so I wanted just to say how appreciative I am, but also impactful how it is to have these conversations, because every time we have them, I find so many great golden nuggets.
Well, I think you have to be curious, and everyone has a story. Everyone has something interesting to say and to share, and that applies to potential clients, and everyone in your company. I tell a story. You probably heard me say this before. I might have said it in our past interviews. I have when I'm traveling, I have a victim du jour, I call it, and I meet somebody at a restaurant or a bar, and I make it a point to say, I'm going to learn everything I can about this other person. And you do that by asking open-ended questions and showing an interest in identifying the content of what they said and how they feel about it. So active listening is a restatement of content and a reflection of feelings. And it's the most powerful tool known in human interaction in order to really gain someone's friendship, cooperation, and avoid conflict or resolve conflict if it says erupted. When people act out and yell and scream and get angry, they're saying, I want to be heard. I want to be understood. And when you've already taken the process of doing that, they don't see the compelling need to ratchet up their anger and frustration, because they can hear that you're understanding. You don't just say, I hear you, I hear you. You prove it by giving it back to them, paraphrasing, summarizing. Izabela, let me make sure I understand that we've talked for a while now, and I want to make sure I understand the problem that you're confronting and how this has affected you. If I do that accurately, I've hit a home run. If I get it wrong, I also win, because you're probably going to say, no, that's not exactly how I feel. I feel this way. Okay, I've now learned more accurately what it is that I need to know. So if you invest the time into listening people and trying to understand their perspective, it's going to pay a dividend back to you as showing you as human and engaging. Again, people want to be heard, they want to be understood, they want to be appreciated. And it's the cheapest concession we can make. We give away nothing. We're just showing, I want to know, I want to understand. Help me understand what it is that you're trying to tell me.
I love that.
You can't fail.
And when we put our best foot effort and foot forward, as you said, over time, and nurture that, even with the ones that are refusing to help or don't want it to engage, either they're going to come along or they're going to see what others are very well effectively doing. And it's a great way to continue to build upon on that. And I love that, Gary. I just want to also take a quick moment before we wrap for today, for this live session. Rafat, thank you so much for all the great comments, as well as other users that unfortunately, from some reason, we can't see your name, but we want to just make sure that, again, you've been acknowledged, and thank you for opportunity to listen, participate. If you have any questions on your end, feel free to ask. But I also wanted just to say, yes, it's very important to nurture relationships, nurture how we do business, and also learn and apply, because all those small incremental change consistently done are creating some really great shifts. And also the way we lead, the way we understand dynamics between people, and also results we are accomplishing and creating, right?
Indeed. It's okay. We're human beings. We all make mistakes. Acknowledge your mistakes. Apologize when it's appropriate. commit yourself to do better, correct the problem if you can. If you can't, make sure you don't repeat it. That's how we've learned since we were little kids and we touched a hot iron and we got burned. We ran down a hill, we fell down and scraped our knee. Trial and error to some extent. But when you get to be a functioning adult in life and business, we should be sharper at expending the time and effort and energy into better understanding who we're dealing with, and to acknowledge and let them know we hear you, we understand you, we appreciate you, and be that likable person that I talked about earlier. I believe it's the pathway to success in just about any endeavor.
Love it. So everybody watching and listening, great lessons here. Are so many golden nuggets and great blueprint and path forward, focusing on positive, focusing on supporting others, being there for them, seek to understand, communicate, be likable, be easygoing, and as a result, obviously, start building these amazing, great relationships that are going to just springboard everything forward. Not only your career and your business, but ultimately life satisfaction and life quality, right? That's what we're all about, how we are interacting, enjoying life, and also building some great legacies. Thank you, Gary. It was an absolute pleasure to have you. And for everybody watching and listening, we'll be seeing you next Saturday. Take care.